Welcome back to Perkins Pipes. Been talking about it for a while, so it's time to do it. It's time to go back to another episode on fountain pens. So I've got my bent prints that I made for the pipe for today. Like this guy, like the elegant lines on him. Seemed appropriate since we're talking about something kind of elegant like fountain pens. So let's get this guy lit. Let's get to talking. So I got a lot of responses on the last video that I did on fountain pens. A lot of people want to see some more of my pens, and I want to kind of see really how fountain pens work. So that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about how fountain pens work. And the key thing about a fountain pen is that the ink is you put the ink into the pen, right? So unlike a ballpoint or a roller ball where the ink cartridge is already there, you have to get the ink into the pen with a fountain pen. Now, for the longest time, there was really one fundamental way to do that. And it started out in the late 1800s with a pen designed by a guy named Roy Conklin. I'll see if we can hold this up here so you can see it in the best way. This was called the Conklin Crescent Filler. Conklin Crescent Filler. And this is actually a chased rubber, hard chased rubber. Mark Twain really liked this pen. He called it the profanity saver because apparently he would always curse when his pens would roll off the table. Well, with that crescent on there, it's not going to roll off the table. And this is the oldest pen in my collection. Although I've lost my list that I had years ago where I had all these cataloged. We had an episode here recently about cataloging things. And I've lost my list. So I really don't know how old this is. Late 1800s, early 1900s, I think. But the way it works, and partly I brought this one out because I can really show it to you. You've got the nib, right? And then you've got this rubber bladder, right? This really is like a little balloon. And the idea is that you stick this into a bottle of ink, and then you compress this in some way, and the ink draws up into that bladder. So with the crescent filler, you simply depress the crescent. And when you depress the crescent, hopefully you can see this here, you depress that, and that's what squeezes the bladder inside the pen, and then allows you to draw the ink up. And then there's a little device here you turn, and that keeps that crescent from depressing while you're writing. You wouldn't accidentally want to squirt ink out onto your pen or out onto your page. So fundamentally, that's how a fountain pen works. You've got that bladder, and you have to squeeze it in some way to draw the ink up into it, and that's what allows it to write. So that was the first one. It's the first what are called self-filling pen. Then this one I know dates to about 1928. It was my grandmother's when she graduated from high school. This is a Sheaffer Duofold, and we'll take the cap off here. You can see the nib. This is called a button filler. Button filler. So you unscrew this a little bit at the end, and we'll see here, we'll kind of move up even more here. You see there's a little button, and you simply depress that, and just like with the crescent, on a crescent filler, it squeezes that bladder inside the pen and allows the ink to draw up through the nib. Screw that back on, and you're ready to go. Now, one thing you'll notice about this, it doesn't have a clip on the side, but it does have this little doodad here at the top, a little hook here. Girls would often wear these around their necks. So you screw that on there, put that on a chain, and you can hang that around your neck, sort of as a necklace. Then, for the longest time, really, the way you depressed that bladder inside the pen was through a little lever on the side of the pen. There's many of these lever filler pens. This happens to be an Esterbrook. Really like this little guy. It's like the white Esterbrook. Is actually called a nurse's pen, nurse white, I suppose. And this dates to the 1950s. But the function really is the same. The action is the same. You've got this lever here on the side, and you just open that up, and that is compressing the bladder inside the pen, and again is drawing the ink up into the pen. So you see that on many pens. That was the basic mechanism for compressing that bladder. And then the Sheaffer company did something different in the, again, 1950s. Now, this was my dad's. It's called a Sheaffer Snorkel. And so the way the Sheaffer Snorkel worked, you see the nib there. And on the back side, you see this little silver thing, little silver tube on the back side of the nib. So you would unscrew the back end here. And as I unscrew that, you'll notice that that little silver tube is starting to extend, right? And then you simply pull out and push in. And that draws the ink up. It's basically a piston. It's the forerunner to what's going to become the standard form of filling pens and what you basically have today, the piston filler. And the idea was you could extend that little tube into your bottle of ink. You wouldn't have to get ink on your nib. And you just pull that out. Works like a piston. Push that back in, and it draws the ink up. Now, unfortunately, this is old and I have to actually kind of push on that tube myself to get it to retract all the way. But I actually love this pen. It's got a wonderfully flexible nib. For a long time, I carried this pretty regularly. It was one of my absolute favorites because of the flexible nib. And so finally, the last one I'm going to show you today is an example of the piston filler, which is what we have. Pretty much all fountain pens today are the piston filler. I decided to bring out a particularly gorgeous specimen. Got this when we were in Florence, Italy, back in about 1998. It is made by an Italian pen maker called Visconti. This is the Ponte Vecchio model. On the little gold band around the cap, you see the Ponte Vecchio, the old bridge there in Florence. Absolutely love the color. There's no way that this is going to come out on video as beautiful as it actually is in reality. It's gorgeous, gorgeous pen. But anyhow, the way this works, and like I say, most pens today work this way. You've got this plastic, what I call a converter. Put a converter into the nib section, and then you just twist this end here. And I don't know if you can see, but there's a little piston inside that converter. Goes down, and you would draw your ink up out of the bottle. So that's a piston filler. And again, this is one of my favorites. This is one I always use for grading. Usually put some colored ink, often a turquoise, to match the beautiful Mediterranean blue of this Visconti. So that's a little look about how fountain pens actually work, and a little bit of another look at some of mine. So hopefully that helped answer some questions about fountain pens. If you like this kind of thing, we always invite you to subscribe to the channel. We're having a lot of fun over here at Perkins Pipes, enjoying pipes like this bent print. Many, many others. So as Malcolm Guite likes to say, I do these little things in order at last to do nothing. Or as I like to say in Latin, Parva ago ut tandem, nihil agam. Have a wonderful day.